Hi everyone, this is Brandon, and today I'm going to be solving puzzles on lichess.org. It doesn't matter what rating you are, you could be 100 or you could be 2800. Tactics is still such an important component of chess, and it's a topic that always needs to be studied, and anyone could always improve at it in terms of pattern recognition, calculation. Hi everyone, this is Brandon, and today I'm going to be solving puzzles on lichess.org. It doesn't matter what rating you are, you could be 100 or 2800, and tactics is always going to be an extremely important component of chess. It's always something that could be improved or sharpened no matter how long you have been playing the game. And today there are so many different resources that could be used to improve at tactics. There's books, and obviously there's a lot of tactics trainers on chess.com, Lichess, which I'm going to be using today, and Chess Tempo, Chess King, and the list goes on. And the Florida State Championship is starting in 3 days. It starts on Friday, August 29th. At the time of this recording, it's August 26th. So what better way to prepare than to just make sure I'm staying sharp and make sure my tactics are good. So I'm going to be using puzzles, the puzzles trainer here on Lichess, and I'm going to be giving my thoughts, what I see when I'm trying to solve a puzzle, and let's jump right into it. So here we have the position right now. So my rating's a bit low. It's 2279. I'm going to set the difficulty to normal. Obviously, I can set the puzzles to have them harder or easier, but I'm going to keep them normal. And just as a goal, I'm going to make this probably like a 30 minute maybe to a 45-minute puzzle session. So it's appropriately long. And obviously, when you're solving puzzles, the goal is to, not really aim for speed, but rather aim for consistency and accuracy. So those are the things I'm going to be focusing on when solving puzzles. And whenever I first approach a position like this, the first thing I always want to do is just, get a feel of like, what's the material at the moment, and also consider what was white's last move, or it's right now black's turn to move. It was white's turn to move. I want to consider what black's last move was. So just consider what my opponent did and just count the material. So counting the material, looks like it was equal before, but after the move b5, it looks like white played the move knight takes d5, so winning a pawn. So I have to keep in mind that any sequence that I do, if it's a tactic, obviously I'm going to be looking to try to win material, or at least try to get some sort of compensation, some sort of play, achieve some goal. So my opponent, or white, played the move knight takes d5 in this game, and immediately I see the discovered attack on the black queen, and I also see there's a discovered attack on the bishop on g7, but likewise the bishop is aiming at b2. So the question is, so there's already a lot of different things that I can capture. The question is, should I make a capture, and if so, what's the best one? So black is attacking a lot of different pieces. White is attacking those exact same pieces. So there's a lot of mutually hanging pieces. So for example, the knight on d5 is hanging. Knight takes d5 is a free piece. At least that's what it looks like. I may be concerned with the fact that this bishop could be attacking the knight due to a discovery, but I don't really see a good discovery. Also have to consider, well, our queen on a5 is safe, luckily because of the knight on c6. The bishop on g7 is protected, so I don't have to worry about any bishop takes g7 if I can respond with king takes g7. White is right now threatening knight takes c7 check, so we want to look at the threats that white has after just kind of being conscious of all the available captures. Knight takes c7 check, and if I play knight takes c7, then now my queen will be hanging on a5 because that knight's kind of drawn away. So already my options are kind of limited. I have to do something about knight takes e7. I could move the king to h8, but that doesn't really solve anything because, for example, knight takes e7 could still be played, and if queen takes d2, then white could potentially answer with knight takes g6 check, a desperado, and then knight takes d2. So, or for example, if king h8, it's possible that even bishop takes g7 could be the first move there. Check, king takes g7, knight takes c7, queen takes d2, knight takes d2. Yeah, knight takes c7, rook takes c7. So it looks like, yeah, white is attacking the knight twice. That has to be considered. So yeah, I don't think black can afford to play a move like king h8, something slow to try to stop that threat. So obviously, I'm considering knight takes d5. If queen takes a5, then knight takes a5. It looks like everything is defended. Any bishop takes g7. King takes g7. Any discoveries with the knight. I think the rook could just move out of the way to b8. So it looks like everything is fine there. Yeah, I don't really see anything else to consider. So again, I'll just go over knight takes d5, just do a little quick blunder check. Is there any knight e5 that could be considered? I really don't think so. I think, well, no, knight e5 doesn't even work because the queen is hanging. That's a very important detail. There's no discovery that can be done with the knight by moving because it has to protect the queen. So yeah, knight takes d5. Again, bishop takes g7, king takes g7. I don't think there's anything to fear. There's no checks on that diagonal, and the queen is just hanging. So I think I could play knight takes d5 with confidence, and it is the correct move. Bishop takes g7. I could insert queen takes d2. That's true, but then knight takes d2 all of a sudden attacks the knight on d5. So I don't think that's necessary. I would want white to capture on a5. So I'm going to play king takes g7, queen takes a5, knight takes a5. And we got that one correct. So yeah, knight takes d5 just ends up winning a piece. That means knight takes d5 was just a really bad move. White can't win material with bishop takes g7 or nothing on the diagonal because the queen is hanging. So yeah, going forward here, if knight e5, trying to get a discovered attack on the knight, the bishop can just be protected, probably with bishop b6. There is c4 that can be considered. I think even maybe just knight d6 and even just giving up the exchange and getting two pieces for the rook is possible. But knight e5, that is interesting. Yeah, not really. I guess rook d8 would probably be easiest, but then again c4, so it's actually not that clear. Kind of interesting. Knight takes a5, knight e5. Is there a good response to knight e5? Maybe just f6 to just attack that piece back, but again, bishop takes d5 check, so honestly, not that sure. Maybe just bishop, okay, bishop b7, because the knight protects the bishop on b7. So any c4 doesn't really work. You could just move the knight away, or even trade first and then move the knight. So I imagine just knight f6 is perfectly fine, and the bishop stays protected by the knight on a5. All right, we got that one right. So yeah, mainly just for solving puzzles, just considering all the forcing moves, captures, literally checks, captures, and attacks is, a really helpful way. I think a lot of people, it doesn't matter what strength they are, they just kind of overlook those simple forcing moves. So it's important to always just fall back on that. So let's go to the next one, and we got 18 points for that one. So let's see how high our rating can get. So white just played the move queen takes b6. They captured a pawn. And right now, black is 2 pawns down, and 3 of white's pawns are connected and passed. Granted, they have not moved very far. So in this position, obviously considering forcing moves, queen takes b6, rook takes b6, knight and rook d1 check, king h2. I don't think there's really an effective follow-up there. Yeah, I don't think white or black is going to be looking to trade pieces. So looking for checks instead. Rook d1 check, king h2. That does look somewhat promising. I think queen takes f2 looks very, very strong. What is the threat there, though? Oh, no, that's a really terrible move because queen takes f2, obviously. But anyways, rook d1 check, king h2. Bishop e5 check looks pretty good. Although g3, and I'm honestly not that sure what is being gained from that. Again, there's no queen takes f2. So not really sure about the check on d1. If the king can just go to h2 and then kind of running out of threats there. So other moves I'm looking for is maybe just moving the queen and try to maybe target something that's a little bit loose. But I don't think there's really not really much of a weakness there in terms of like any hanging pieces. So rook d1 check. I'll go back to rook d1 check just to switch quickly back to that move. Rook d1 check, king h2. and bishop b5 check g3, just to want to really confirm that there's not much there. Oh no, actually there is something there. Yes, so rook d1 check, king h2. Good thing I went over with that. Went over with that again, because rook d1, king h2, bishop b5 check. King h3 should just lose to rook h1 check, king g4, and then I don't think there's really much to calculate from there. But rook d1 check, king h2, bishop b5 check, knight takes c5 check. Let me redraw the arrow this to d1. Knight takes c5, queen takes c5 check, g3. I think black just simply has the move queen e4, threatening the move rook h1 or queen h1, and I don't think there's any checks for white. The only check would be rook b8 check, because the d8 square is controlled by the rook on d1. So rook b8 check, king h7, and there doesn't really seem to be a check on a dark square. There's no check on d4, because again, rook takes d4. So once again, rook d1 check, king h2, bishop b5 check, g3, there's the move queen d5. Attacking the knight, and if the knight moves, there's rook h1 or queen h1 checkmate. And again, there doesn't really seem to be a check on any good square. Rook b8 check, king h7. Again, no queen d4 because rook takes. So I think rook d1 is just going to seal the deal here. And it is. And just to make sure, there's no better move than bishop b5. No, bishop b5 should do it. And then g3, and just once again to go over, bishop b5, g3, queen d5. I don't think white has a good check again. I mean, rook b8 doesn't even really work fully because queen takes. I think that's possible too. And then queen takes b8, queen takes b8 check, king g7, queen back to e5, queen takes d5, knight takes b5, probably rook b2 is sufficient. I don't think the pawns are going to make it. Although maybe knight c4, so but I think rook b8, king g7 is probably a little bit simpler. So yeah, I'm going to go with queen d5. And yes, it is correct. Again, if the knight moves, I guess knight g1 can be played. And that does stop queen h1, but just want to see if black has any adequate response. Is bishop takes g3 possible? Because king takes g3, rook takes g1. If f takes g3, probably rook d2 check, king h3, queen h1, king g4, and probably h5. So just to play through some of those moves, I think bishop takes g3 check. Again, king takes g3, rook takes g1 is bad, but I think f takes g3. I have the choice of either queen d2 check or rook d2 check. If queen d2 check, king h3. Yeah, black doesn't really have a good forcing move because the knight is protected now that the f-pawn is moved. I think rook d2 check, king h3. I think there is just queen f5 check now that I'm seeing this a second time. Yeah, queen f5 check, g4, and queen d3 check, and then white is forced to block with either the knight or the queen. It's going to be mate. Yeah, bishop takes d3 I think might just seal the deal. Yes, and it does, and it's forced mate. So queen d5, we has to move the knight to... Probably just has to let it drop or move it to a very inferior square. I'm interested to see what is the best move here. I guess just rook b8 and then rook d8 and give up material. Interesting. So, yeah, that's totally lost. Yeah, nice little puzzle there. So, all right, so now looking at this position, it's white's turn to move. Counting the material, black is up a pawn. I also notice black, of course, has the bishop pair. The bishop pair is beautifully active, and black just played this move, rook to d3, attacking the queen, and also the queen is pinned due to the bishop. But also there's this little tactical element to this position of the queen being pinned. So unfortunately, I can't play the move queen takes d3 because that is illegal, and knight takes d3 allows bishop takes e3 check, and then the rook falls on c1. So I don't think that's going to work. So in a position like this with all these like hanging pieces or like these kind of like cross pins here, immediately I'm thinking of the move rook takes c5 because that also counterattacks the queen. And if b takes c5, then queen takes d3 is possible. If rook takes c5, rook takes d3, then rook takes c7. winning a piece, because also the knight on b3 is hanging, but rook takes b3, rook takes b7. Yes, black can play rook takes b2, but I think the piece is going to be way more meaningful after a move like rook d1. So, or rook c1, probably a little bit more accurate. And if rook takes c5, queen takes c5, we could trade queens by taking with the, probably with the queen, and then b takes, and then knight takes d3. I think it's just going to win material, and in that scenario, we would just be up a piece. So I think we just win a piece no matter what. Rook takes c5 should just win. And if black does something else, I think just knight takes d3. So yeah, rook takes c5, and then taking back with the queen and letting the rook hang there. I think it's also possible that you can play knight takes d5, rook takes d5, knight takes d7, or knight takes b7. However, that's only 2 pieces for the rook, and probably white has to be careful to make sure that the knight doesn't get trapped on b7. For example, maybe f6 attacking the knight, and then rook d3 and cutting away the d6 square for that knight. So I think just queen takes c5 is going to be simplest, and then knight takes d3. There is the fork with c4, but then knight c5, either knight to c5 counterattacking the bishop. So that's going to win material. So yeah, c4, and I don't think it doesn't matter which knight you use. Maybe it's a little more accurate to use this knight to give this knight the option of knight e5, but this would attack the bishop back there, and then if obviously white takes, then we take the bishop, and if black takes time to save his bishop, then we could save our knight, so we would win a piece. So yeah, that's a little it's kind of like a tactic gone wrong for black because of the bishop hanging and the counterattack back on the queen. Yeah, very interesting. All right, so now we got an endgame. Okay, so now it's white's turn to move. Material is equal. Both sides have mutual passed pawns. Black has the passed f pawn. White has the passed h pawn. Now, obviously, the h pawn is more beneficial because it's an outside passed pawn. That being said, black can reach to it quickly, and obviously both sides have to remain within the square of the pawn if they can catch it. It's a little more frustrating for me that the f5 pawn is protected by e6, so I can't really win it, and I have to remain within the square of the pawn. However, also, of course, what's kind of screaming out a little bit more is this formation right here. There's a very well-known study where white has a breakthrough with the move b6, and then it doesn't matter what black takes with. If he takes with the a pawn, then the move is c6, pawn takes, and then a6. And then even though the king might be able to catch the pawns, the problem is that we have this h pawn that's going to promote. So even if we get a passed pawn and the black king is well within the queening square, we also have the h pawn, and the pawns are going to be way too separated. So for example, b6, let's say c takes b6, then a6, attacking b7 takes, and then c6. The pawn is going to promote, but we also have the h pawn. And there also is the theme of that if we were able to push both pawns, because black is obviously going to have a passed pawn that's going to start on a5. And we can get the pawn all the way to c7, the other pawn all the way to h7. And if we need to gain a tempo on the king to prevent black from promoting first, we could play c8 queen, king takes c8, and h8 queen to just get the queen on the board. So now the question is, can we play the move h5? And the answer is not really, because black is going to play b6 and shut our chances of creating a passed pawn on that side of the board. We can either take or push, and then black will probably just push back or take back. So yeah, the move is b6 here. And takes, and now we want to make a passed pawn, so not c6 because b takes, and then this a pawn is stuck. If he takes back. a6, the pawn is frozen. So a6, pawn takes, and then c6. And then just to showcase what can happen after, let's say black just starts pushing. a5, h5, a4, h6, a3, c7, actually a2. This starts to get a little bit tricky. So maybe not pushing the h pawn, rather just pushing c7 right away, king d7, h6, a3, h7, a2, and then promote with check, king takes, and then h8, queen check, and then queen h1 to stop the pawn. So that's kind of an important thing, just to make sure that pawn doesn't get there first. Just push the c pawn and then push the h pawn. Obviously a little bit complicated there. All right, we got another endgame puzzle. This one was from a GM game. White was GM Jaguar 92. It's good that all these puzzles come from like real games. Who is this player? Vitaly Sivuk versus a 2583, and this was a blitz game. All right, so we have another endgame. Obviously, materials equal, but black is definitely at least for choice because of the more advanced king. Black has opposition if he won't get opposition if he has to move the king. Huge potential of making a pass pawn on this side of the board and even on this side of the board. And yeah, just the main feature is just the active king. Also, f3 could be very, very weak. The king could just hop in there, and if the white king has to move back. So obviously, when you're in a pawn endgame, you kind of just want to consider every possible move because, or every legal move, because there simply just aren't a lot of legal moves. So we can start ruling some of these out really quickly. H4, I think we could just rule out because G takes H4. I think that's pretty trivial. A5, I think A4 kind of shuts things down. Or maybe not really. We'll actually come back to it. The move that I'm thinking about is King D4 with the king, but then King D2, and we can't really break through, which is problematic. Other moves to consider, B5, which could be a little bit dangerous because that means white could get a pass pawn after takes, and then A4. And takes, and white is well within able to play the move King D2, King C2, and blockade the pawn. And then we'd have to worry about the passed A pawn. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. Also, what I'm considering is the move King D2 or King D4, King D2. And I guess then the move B5 takes, and then A4 then. But actually, that might work. Let's think about this. So King D2, King D4, B5, C takes, A takes, A4, takes, King C4. A5, King B5. I think we might be able to catch the A pawn and also hold on to C5. So the thing is, if we play B5 right away, takes, A4, takes, I think we're just going to be out of the square of the pawn. King D4, A5. Yeah, we're not going to get there in time. So we need to get within that square first with King D4. White can't really sit and do nothing because King C3. So also white might not even have a really a good move. Let's say King D4, F3 or F4, which would force en passant. King takes, King C3. King F4, King takes B3, King G5, King takes C4, King takes H5, King D5, and the king can even go well within the queening square, or at least force the king to get in front and then push C4. So white can't really do that. It's important to spend time on these puzzles. You want to treat them like a tournament game. You know, they're not, again, you don't want to focus on speed. We want to focus on consistency and accuracy. So it makes sense to, you know, take your time. So King D4, King D2, B5 takes A4. There really isn't much else to consider there because instead of A4, if white, I don't even know what else white does. We're just going to play the move C4 and get a pass pawn there. And then probably still catch the A pawn. So once again, King D4, King D2, B5, C takes, A takes, A4, B takes, King C4. Yeah, if King C2, then just King B4, winning the A pawn. And then if A5, then King B5, King C3, King takes A5, King C4, King B6, and we're up a pawn. White can't really make up pass pawn on that side of the board. So yeah, I'm pretty confident that the move is King D4 and it's correct. And yeah, A5 is going to be a complete mistake because A4 and we can't really do anything. Then we have to go back to E4 and then King E2 and then there's no breakthrough. So we need a pawn lever at this point. So B5 takes and then takes. And yeah, just it is correct. But going on with the variation, A4 takes, we can play King C4 and we're well within the square of the pawn. And unfortunately, white can't try to get the C pawn. So we're able to keep it. That means we'll be able to win. So even if white tries to push it all the way, take and play King C4, we play King B6. And we're just going to get a situation like this where we could try to push the pawn all the way and get to the point where it gets all the way down to here. And then we could play King E2 and then just pick off that pawn. Yeah, F4 en passant, of course. Otherwise, F4 would be very strong. So, yeah. That's a nice little, getting within the queening square and then looking for the pawn break. Even though white gets the outside pass pawn, our king activity prevails. What good is an outside pass pawn if a king is going to get it, and if your king is, or the opponent's king is much weaker. So that was an interesting one. All right, so now it's changed a little bit. We're in an endgame. So obviously the first thing I noticed, we are down a queen. However, we have a pawn on h7 that can promote to h8. But obviously I see that queen takes h8 can be played. Rook takes and rook takes h8. So we'll be down a rook. So we may have to play this with a little bit of precision. So move I'm considering obviously is rook takes h8. Or rook takes a8, but obviously queen takes e8, and I don't think we're going to be promoting. Just the queen goes to h8, and I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish anything there. A move, however, that I'm considering is saying, okay, I want to promote the h-pawn, but I can't have that queen be there controlling that square. So a move that I'm thinking about is c3. So if knight takes c3, that queening square is obviously blocked, so then h8 queen. Perfect. However, if queen takes c3, what's good about that is that all of a sudden it hangs the rook on a8. So rook takes a8, and hold on. None of you saw that, but my screen went on sleep mode for a second because I was so busy calculating. But anyways, so yeah, c3, queen takes c3, rook takes c8, and then we promote. And despite the fact we're down a queen and we still have a full tempo to promote, or a full move, and it's black's turn, there's no checks near our king. Our king is actually very, very safe with the bishop and the pawns protecting it. So just checking to see if there's anything else. Nothing on this back rank. Black would need to expend a tempo to move the queen and then swing the rook over. And once we promote a queen, if we're able to keep it, I mean, black's king is on c5 where it could get checked. And let's say I'm able to promote and trade all the rooks and the queens. Well, I'm up 2 pawns in this endgame, and I could just play g5, g6. So yeah, c3 I think is going to do it. I don't think the queen can come back and do anything. We're just going to play h8 on the next turn. So yeah, c3. And it's correct, knight c7. It protects the rook, but the problem is we're still going to play h8. And then even after the trade of rooks, we should be doing fine. Even if black gets c3, there's going to be checks against black's king. So let's say h8 queen, rook takes g8, queen takes g8. So following this, and then queen takes c3. We might have moves like queen f8 check. And that should at least put black in some trouble, followed by queen d6. And again, no checks near our king. The knight might end up getting checked, actually. That was my phone. Let me put that on silent. So yeah, I think h8 queen, again, we could just work it out really quickly. Rook takes g8. There's also queen d4 check, but I don't think that's going to be mate anytime soon. Just king c6, and then we can't take back the rook, so it'll be a rook down. So h8 queen, rook takes g8, queen takes g8, queen takes c3. Queen f8 check. King c6. Obviously, the worry is that the c-pawn becomes dangerous in that variation. I'm also thinking about just queen c8, attacking the knight, and then if queen a5, honestly get a little bit worried at that point. But to be honest, I really don't think there is anything else to calculate. It's either we play h8 queen or we don't queen. And black gets in queen takes. So I'm going to play h8 queen no matter what. Yeah, and this is the right move. So rook takes. It could just be that this ending could just be drawn, and that was just a saving move here. So I was thinking just queen f8 check, just to calculate a little bit further, even though it's probably not necessary at all. King c6. I guess there is just queen h6 check, for example. Or queen e7. I'm not really confident in white's winning chances in this variation. Maybe just push the pawn g5. That's possible too. And then queen e5, maybe just g6. Yeah, we might promote first too. I'm interested to see if that ending is winning. And it is. But Stockfish is not saying anything like super overwhelming. Like +3 in this type of position is not super overwhelming, and it's going to take some precision. Yeah, Queen F8, King C6. Yeah, even though it's showing like nearly +3, it's not like there's a forced mate. So, yeah, Bishop D1 is the top move. So, even though it's saying +3, White obviously has some work to do. But we were able to solve the puzzle. C3 was the right move, and it's the only move in this position. So, again, interesting. All right, so we have another pawn endgame. Equal pawns. All of White's pawns are isolated. That is something to consider. None of them are connected. Black's pawns are all connected. But White has the more active king. And also what I notice is that even though Black's pawns are connected, they're easily attacked. B5 immediately splits these pawns up. C takes. King takes. Black can't really make a pass pawn on this side of the board. H5, G4, we could just take. And there is no, there's no G3, of course. Another thing that I'm thinking about is possibly to run Black out of moves. Because I don't know how many waiting moves Black has with this king. I guess he could just shuffle back and forth to C7 and B7 and try to tell us to make progress. If we play King B6, I don't think that's super great. Just King D6 and potentially threatening King E5. And that's probably not ideal. But in this position, I would very much like to win the D5 pawn, take B5 by playing B5 takes, King takes, and try to get the move and try to get D5 as well. So let's start just working those out. So B5, there's literally nothing else to consider than C takes. King takes D5 is probably going to be a step in the wrong direction because we have to catch the B pawn. B4, King C4, King D6, King takes B4, King D5 is going to be a little bit uncomfortable. So takes. It's possible that even maybe King E7 could be played. Let's see. Let's try to actually just work this out. So B5 takes. King takes D5, B4, King C4, King D6, King takes B4, King D5, King C3, H5. White maybe could win that position, to be honest, because he'll be able to play D4. So after takes, that is kind of interesting. Maybe Black just plays King E7, King C5, King E6, King takes B5, King D5, and that's going to be a problem. So not even just wasting tempo moving the pawn, just moving the king, or even inserting H5. So yeah, King. So I think B5 is a step in the wrong direction there, because I think White's going to run out of moves first. So the other move that I'm thinking about is just, wasting a little bit of just using a reserve tempo with D4. Probably not allowing Black to play D4 himself. Yeah, because H5 can always be met by the H3, and that doesn't accomplish anything. And let's say D4. Again, I just want to consider all the possible moves here. D4, King C7. I think now you can afford to play B5 because takes and then King takes, and the King's gonna go back to the King should be able to go back to C5 at some moment, because then the Kings are just gonna get shouldered after King D6 and King B6. But then let's say White plays H3 instead. Let's say he tries to use another tempo. What's the difference between that and D4? That's the question. Could it be that Black can play D4 himself? King takes D4. So H3. I don't think H5 is necessary here. It could be H3, H5, and then D4, King E6. No, that's definitely bad. King takes and then just B5. So maybe H3, H5, D4, King B6 take, take, king d6. No, but obviously that cannot be good either. Again, I just want to see if there's any difference between d4 and h3, if black has some extra move. The only extra move I could see after h3 is if black can play the move d4. King takes d4, king d6. And then king e4, king e6. And I don't think white is getting anywhere. d4 followed by king d6. Because if king f5, then king d5, taking d4. I think white can even go around all the way here. So I think d4 is going to be the first move. It's not. Wow. Is it h3? Why does d4 not work? Or could it be b5 and maybe I'm missing something? It could be b5 takes and then d4. And then taking that. It might be that actually. Yes, and it's d4. No, it is taking on b5. Maybe it's taking on d5 and then d4. No, it's taking on d5? Wow. Why is that the case? Okay, this is interesting. What did I miss here? I thought b4 was possible. And then king c4. King d6. I thought that was my calculation here. Or not here. I thought it was just king e... Well, no, king e7 fails to king d6. King c6, of course. No, no. b4. King c5, king e6. Take king d5. That's what I didn't like. Takes, king takes d5. So king e7. I might be able to play d4 actually. Because b4 then here. Yeah, and king d6 takes king d5. Yeah, that would be it. That's what I missed. Yeah, it was a lot simpler than I thought. So d4. But king c5 is also winning. But I just probably have to play d4 at some moment. Yeah, obviously king takes d5. King takes d5 is losing. I have to play d4 to take away that possibility and play the move king c3. Interesting, yeah. I just overthought it. I overthought it completely by playing moves like h3 and d4. But I just want to see, why is d4 not working here? Because king c7. And then if b5 takes, king takes. And then king d6, king b6. h5, h3. h4 is probably simplest. And then this ending is drawn. And then hg4. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, both sides promote. Wow. So yeah, b5 was just way more obvious. b4, yeah. Again, king c4, because this obviously didn't work because of king c3, and then the whole what they call the fox in the chicken coop, promoting the pawn and then abandoning it to go get these pawns. Interesting. Yeah, it's only the first one we got wrong, so no big deal. All right, so no endgame puzzle this time. So black to move in this position. I'm gonna keep going. I feel good for this one. So black to move. Counting the material. What did white play? Traded a bishop. Counting the material. White is up a piece, attacking the bishop on e7. We can play bishop takes e7. But then knight takes c3, and how many pawns do we have on the board right now? Black has 7, white has 6. So bishop takes c8, bishop takes f8, knight takes c3. I don't think is anything special. So obviously the move to consider is the move c takes b2, and then yeah, it's a pretty big move. What do you do about that? The rook is hanging. Knight g5, but then bishop takes g5. I don't think there really is too much else to consider than that. Yeah, because the rook is just going to be taken. There's nothing with the queen. The only other move to consider is c2, but then queen takes c2. And bishop takes f8. Again, nothing special. C takes b2, I think, is just winning. And bishop takes c7, inserting that move. I think b takes a1, queen as possible, bishop takes d8, and then queen takes b1 check. I think it's perfectly possible, and just taking the rook after. This is the first move, by obviously. So bishop takes c7, and then the question is, what's the next move here? Oh, we are down a rook, so probably just playing b takes a1, bishop takes d8, queen takes b1 check, king e2, and probably just queen takes h1, honestly. I don't know, and white doesn't really have any checks anywhere. Knight g5, I think, could just be cold-bloodedly met with knight takes d8. Yeah, I don't really see anything else. Well, no, yeah, because then after queen takes c7, if white plays white could just play queen c3, b takes a1, queen takes a1, and then material is level. Black is up a pawn, actually, but I don't know if it's too much to rave about. I'd rather just take the rook and win the other rook. I think we can be materialistic there. Yes. And then queen takes b1 check. And probably just queen takes a1 at this point. Yeah, because if knight g5, I think you just cold-bloodedly play knight takes d8. And it is possible. Knight e5, it likes it a little bit better. Oh, no, never mind. Knight takes d8 is perfectly fine. And yeah, no checks. Queen b8, even c6 is fine. Well, yeah, it protects it. Of course it's fine. Queen f5, and then just queen takes g2, I imagine is okay. And no checks. Amazing stuff. All right, so looking at this position, material is level, 6 pawns apiece. Obviously, looking at white's pieces, the rook on h3, the bishop lined up to that square, this bishop being closed off. Immediately, I spot rook takes h7 as being a possibility here. King takes h7. Queen h5 check, the knight being pinned, not being able to play knight h6 because of the bishop on that diagonal. So rook takes h7 check, king takes h7, queen h5, king g8. And then the move bishop c4 should be a killer there. The only move would be rook f7 or even queen d5, and that should do it. And obviously black's going to lose a decisive amount of material. I don't think queen h5 is forcing enough. Maybe black can play knight h6 then. So, yeah, I think it's going to be rook takes h7 here. And if king g8, then again bishop c4, king takes h7, queen h5 check. Knight h6 though is a little problematic. Rook takes h7 check, king h7, queen h5. Okay, rook takes 7, king g8. I think actually just the simplest thing after rook takes h7, king h8 is just to play the move queen h5. And if knight h6, just rook takes h6 because g takes h6. Rook takes h6, g h6, queen g6 check, king h8, queen h7 mate. So rook takes h7 here. I don't think there's nothing else to consider. And then queen h5 check, and king g8, bishop c4 check is devastating. Yeah, the only move would be queen d5 or rook f7. Surprisingly, it's not mating, but yeah, it's obviously decisive. Rook f7, I think you could have a choice. Queen takes, and then just go back, or take the knight. That's also fine. And d takes c3. Oh yeah, then queen h5 is mate. So yeah, rook takes h7. All right, so queen g5 check in this position. So obviously the king is on e6. That is a huge, huge concern for black. Black is also what? He is down 3 pawns, but he has an extra bishop. It is entombed, though, on g7. And also the other one can technically be entombed on c8. So there's also rook d6 check. Considering it's white's, it would be white's turn to move, then rook d6 check. White can play the move f4, queen takes, and then rook takes. So immediately I'm thinking of ways to get out of this check here. Queen takes, rook takes. The problem with that, though, of course, is the fact that e5 is pretty hard to defend. Yeah, this is a little bit of a tricky situation here. Yeah, so obviously there's only several ways to get out of the check. King b1, I think just queen takes c5 check is a problem. If queen g4 check, then just king f7, and then the queen is being attacked. So f4, rook takes f4 is obviously to be considered, but I think the move queen d5 check should spell doom pretty soon. King f5. Then maybe queen f7. King g4, I don't know how the king survives there. Yeah, queen takes g7 I think would be simplest. There's no good discovery. The king always goes to b1. So f4, queen takes f4 check. Queen takes, rook takes f4. I see what it is. So f4, queen takes f4 check. Queen takes a4. Rook takes f4. Knight d5, threatening the fork. Threatening knight takes f4, and also threatening knight c7 with the fork. So f4 just like puts that move on the spot there. So yeah, f4 here. No, it's not. Wow. Why? Wow. Why is it not f4? What am I missing? Could it just be rook takes f4 and black survives? Maybe black just plays king e7 cold-bloodedly after queen d5 check. Let's see. So yeah, f4, I guess. Maybe there could be rook takes f4 because queen d5 check, king e7. Now that I look at it a second time, queen d6 check. Just king f7 maybe. Getting out of there and playing king g8. Wow. So how else to respond to a check? What is the best way? I guess just king b1. That really would be the only way to play this. And then if queen takes c5, I guess queen c4 check followed by rook e1. That's really the only other way I would consider king b1 here, and it is correct. The king moves out of the way. Now knight d5 or knight b5, maybe queen f3 check. Maybe e6. Check, bishop takes c6. No, that's a little bit silly. Maybe now f4? Oh, maybe now queen c4 check because bishop b6, then rook d7. Okay, that's going to do it because the king can't run away to g8. He has to play king e7 and then obviously knight d5 check if king e8. After queen c4 check, king e8. Probably again just knight b5 or knight d5 should be lights out. Yeah, rook d7 here. And then queen takes e6 check. So why does f4 not work? Queen takes f4 check, queen takes, rook takes f4, knight d5. Oh, rook f7. And I'm down a piece, right? e5 is probably going to drop at some point. Wow. Yeah, I totally missed that. I missed rook f7. Yeah, good. Queen takes c5 check. I guess just queen c4 check. King f5 is the best move, which is hilarious. But yeah, let's say oh wow, yeah, I didn't realize that that's not possible. This is not possible. King e7 is not possible because rook e1. King f5 is really, or king f6 even. And then yeah, I guess there's a lot of things that win. I think rook d1 is a little more natural, but f4 is also lights out there. Rook d1, let's say bishop b6, and probably just yeah queen, maybe queen g5 check, queen g5. Okay, knight e4 there, but g5. Queen takes g7. Wow, or queen takes h7. Yeah, black is up a piece, but he has to be careful. Rook h8. Okay, and you get the piece back and attacking this as well. Wow, and then we're just up a few pawns in the endgame. Yeah, I thought f4. I missed rook f7. That's kind of the main thing. Otherwise, yeah, king b1 is definitely more obvious. All right, no problem. So, rook 1 b7. So, counting the material, this looks like some sort of like King's Indian or Benoni. White has 6 pawns. Black has 6 as well. Passed pawns on c3. And obviously my queen is being attacked. Obviously the first thing to think about is just moving the queen. So, for example, just queen c4. And that's the benefit of just attacking the knight there. But really no other benefit other than that. That being said, the knight's actually a little stuck there. But white would probably just play rook takes c8. And then queen takes c8, and then what does that move actually accomplish? Other forcing moves, taking the rook, for example, rook takes b8, rook takes c7. I don't think that really does anything, though. Queen takes b7, rook takes b7. Again, also doesn't really do anything. But actually, maybe it could. Queen takes b7, rook takes b7, bishop takes d4. Bishop takes d4. Knight e2 check is playable. Queen takes d2, c2. Queen takes c2, rook takes c2. Black will be up a piece because of that extra bishop. Black is up a piece right now, actually. That is important. So rook takes b. So queen takes b7, rook takes b7. Bishop takes d4. So white has three. So black has 3 pieces for the queen in that position. Bishop takes d4, knight e2 check. Yeah, I think allowing moving the king and allowing knight takes d4 would be silly. So probably just rook 1 b7. So again, queen takes b7. I might as well put some arrows. Queen takes b7, rook takes b7, bishop takes d4. But the question is if, you know, black is creating a threat after that. Does white even have to, can white do something else other than bishop takes d4? But honestly, I don't really see it. Otherwise, just bishop takes f2 check. Also, again, just knight e2. So, for example, a rook, queen takes b7, rook takes b7, bishop takes d4, king f1, bishop takes f2, king takes f2. Black doesn't really have a threat there. And he actually has 2 pieces for a queen. He doesn't have a rook for it. So, sorry, white is actually up the exchange. Black is not up a piece here. But now I'm seeing this. Queen takes b8 is possible. Rook takes b8, rook takes b8. Queen takes c3. And then, okay, black is then up, has a rook and a minor piece, and is right now threatening bishop takes d4. So, for example, queen takes b8, rook takes b8, rook takes b8, queen takes c3, bishop takes d4. Wins material there pretty much. Because if queen c7, then I imagine just rook d7 check, or rook b1 check, king h2, bishop takes f2, threatening bishop, things like bishop g1. So, or even rook there. I think it might be queen takes b8. I don't really see another good queen move. I think that's just going to allow white to trade pieces. So queen takes b8, rook takes b8, rook takes b8, threatening rook b2. Yeah, I don't see white having a way to take advantage of that. And if the knight ever moves knight c6, I think again just rook b2, followed by any knight b2, or knight d2, or knight e2, or knight e3. I think it's queen takes d8. Yes, and then rook takes. Yeah, and black is just winning. Because again, queen takes c3, then bishop takes d4. And it doesn't matter what you take back with knight e4, so you can't even take it back. Then black has 3 pieces for the queen, 2 minors and a rook. So, and there's nothing that can be done because of that little tactic. So king h1 potentially to get out of it. But even then, this move, queen takes c3, and then rook takes f2. And yeah, no queen c8, because hey, you could even give it up, because even after queen takes, there's no check on d6. And then white can't really push anything. This hangs. So yeah, really, really interesting stuff. So yeah, queen takes d3, bishop takes d4. I was saying something like this, but again, rook b1 here, and then bishop takes f2. And even if you play a move like, I don't know, queen d8, is rook g1 winning here? I think it is. Yeah, it's still winning, threatening rook takes g2. And if queen takes d8, then king g7, no queen e5. Crazy stuff. Yeah, queen takes b8. Yeah, it's a really nice queen sacrifice. It's crazy how strong that pawn is just because it's tactically protected. All of white's pieces are just on miserable squares there. All right, let's keep going. Let's see if we can break 2400. I know this is a pretty long recording. All right, we're in check right now. Looks like this came from a dragon, something like that. Or no, this is probably a Caro-Kann or a Scandinavian. Rook takes g6 check. Black has all of this on the F file. Maybe there's some checks on D3 at some moment, but we're in check right now. Excuse me, it's late at night. It's right now 11:12 where I'm at. If rook takes g6, rook takes g6, king f8, queen d6 check is pretty annoying, or even queen b8 check. What I'm thinking about is just the move king h7, threatening the rook, and the rook has to move. Yeah, because I don't think king f8 is going to do it, rook g8, and I don't think rook takes g6, rook takes g6, king f8 is going to cut it either, due to queen d6 check, or even queen b8 check. So the only other legal move to consider is king h7. There's no queen h5. Rook takes f6 probably just gets met with rook takes. Or even queen takes. Probably rook takes. Because if queen c7, then rook back. And then right now queen d3 check is an issue, followed by rook f1. So I think it's just going to be king h7. Any other rook moves? No rook h6, just rook takes, and everything's defended there. I think it's king h7. No, it's not. There's no way it's rook takes g6. That'd be unbelievable if that's the move. It could also be... No, it can't be that, because rook h6. But rook h7, maybe. Or no, if king h8, I think there's just... there. Rook f8. Rook takes f6. Wow, it is that. Just king h7. Wow. And then queen d3 check, and then rook f1. Oh, no, I'm sorry, queen here. Okay, so why does this not work? Just rook takes, or just rook g3. I thought that was possible, but I thought, okay, I'm fine with that. But it looks like just rook takes g6 is better. Because obviously there's no rook g3 now, just queen d1 mate. Whereas before the rook was on f1. Wow. Okay. So right now counting the material, it's equal. We have a queen on f6. I'm instantly thinking of mating possibilities. Rook d8 is a possibility. Perhaps even rook takes c6. Pawn takes, queen takes c6, king h8, rook d7. And if queen b1 or queen a1, king h2. Or no, wait, hold on. H4 is hanging there. Rook takes c6, rook takes c6, f takes c6, queen takes g6 check. King h8. Queen h6 at queen h6 check, king g8. Rook d7 then. Because now rook takes h4 doesn't come with check. So queen b1, king here. Well, there's no queen b1 because I take. So queen a1 check, king h2. No, rook takes h4 is queen takes. I think it's rook takes c6. No, wow. I'm not on it today, clearly. It could be trying to draw the queen away from the rook. Maybe b3. Could it be rook d8? Could it be h5? Actually, it might be h5 now that I think about it. Yeah, it is. And just h6, right? Yep. So rook takes c6 does not work. Wow, rook takes h4 is a draw. Because that will lure the queen away. Wow. I didn't anticipate that. h5. So yeah, I wanted this. This is what I wanted. Queen h6 check. Can I play rook d7 or no? There's queen. Yeah, queen a1. So here, and then rook d7. There's still queen b1. I guess the queen... Oh, wow. Defending everything. Okay, so queen takes c6 check. Then again... Okay, this is getting a little silly at this point. h5 is just way simpler. That's just getting silly at that point. All right, another pawn ending. All right, so counting the material, it's equal. I immediately see g4 creating a passed pawn. The problem is after takes. I think I can just take. Because if king e4, then f5 check. King takes f5, g3. So it is g4. I don't think it's h4. Yeah, if h4, you can just play king e4. So takes. And then f5 check. Yeah. Because if king takes, just g3, promoting. Another pawn ending. So the first thing to consider here, obviously, is g takes f3. Also, f takes g4, but that will allow f takes e4. So e takes f3 is the first thing to consider. If takes, then just g4, and that is fantastic for us. Because then we could take f5 next. So takes, and I think just f4. King e4, king here. This is the first move, obviously. I don't think I need to consider anything else. So the question is f takes g4 or f4. F takes g4, king takes g4, king e6. King f3, king d5, king e3. Yeah, that is unnecessary. Or maybe it's not. No, I want to keep the extra pawn. I don't want to trade too many pawns. F takes g4, king takes g4, king e6, king f3, king d5, king e3, g5, king f4. Yeah, I'll go get this, he'll go get this, and then take h6. So I want to play f4. Yeah. Because going back here, I don't think this is going to cut it. g4, king f4, takes. I could take on g4. I was about to get scared there. Then, yeah, here, and this is going to be... Wow, it's... Yeah, even winning for white as well. I think I have to go just catch the king there. Yeah, I have to play here and catch the king here. All right, this position now. All right. We're down the exchange. Black's king is very exposed. On that square, immediately what catches my eye is bishop h6 check, king h8, and then... Or king g8, king g8, and then knight d5, and then knight takes c7. Now, the thing is that there's a lot of orders of when those moves can be played. So is there a specific order that's better than the others? So knight d5 now, attacking the queen. Excuse me. Queen d8, bishop h6 check, king g8, knight takes, king h7, bishop takes f8. Okay. I would have to consider after knight d5 if black can play the move bishop h6 or bishop f6. That's really the only thing to consider there. Okay. So let's say knight d5, bishop f6. Well, just queen h6 check will win material, so that's not going to work. So knight d5, probably queen d4 there, maybe. But no, queen h6 check, king g8, knight takes c7 mate. So let's say play this now. King h7, obviously bishop takes f8. But bishop h6 check, king g8, knight d5. I guess black can always... No, he can't play queen b7 because I have two attackers on that square. Maybe there could always be the capture knight takes f6, pawn takes, and queen takes. So there's a lot of permutations where that's working, but there could be one that's better than the others. So bishop h6 or knight d5 first? What is the difference? If there is a difference. Yeah, I don't know if I want to go queen h6 because then that's going to remove an attacker of e7. Decisions. I think it would make sense to just play the more forcing move, though. I guess maybe bishop h6, king h7, bishop takes f8, check, king g8. Wait, bishop h6, check, king h7, bishop takes f8, check, king g8. So this sequence right here. So now we're up a piece. I feel like that's just winning, but maybe there could be queen f2 there. Well, actually, I see that the king could be taking on f8 and escaping via e7. So bishop h6 check, king g8. Or sorry, king h7, bishop takes f8, king here. Queen h6 isn't actually like creating a threat. So it moves a little slow. Yeah, bishop h7 check. There's also bishop e3, so I'm a little skeptical. Yeah, I think just bishop h6. Why waste time with knight d5 first? Bishop h6, king h7, bishop e3. Yeah. And then now knight d5. Yes. Okay, then knight takes b6, of course. Unless knight takes c7 check is possible. Which, yeah, there's no reason for that. The bishop could just move and then the rook will block, so knight takes b6. Yeah, I think I was overthinking it. Just king h7, just bishop e3 is good enough too. So I don't know. Is there a reason not to play knight d5? Oh, rook h8. Wow. I had to play bishop h6 for that reason. Okay, case closed there. Let's try to get to 2400. I think it's possible. This video is going to be pretty long, but I might as well try. Queen for a rook. Queen e8 check is a threat. We're going to promote, but again, queen e8 check. Queen takes g7. Rook h3 is going to be a problem. So I'm obviously seeing rook h1, king takes, and then queen d1 check. King h2. There could also just be the move rook c8. Like just silent but deadly there. And how do you stop d1? Because rook h1, king h1, queen e1, d1, queen, king h2. Where's the next check? I think it's just rook c8. Because rook d3, just take. And again, promote. Yeah. Amazing stuff. d1 queen. Takes, nothing over here. Wow. Silent but deadly. Yeah, because this doesn't lead anywhere. No checks. Yeah, and black has to expend another tempo. He didn't gain anything from that. But rook c8 forces promotion. And, like, we're able to keep the queen. Or white has to give up a rook. Like, this is the best move. And then just not taking, just probably putting the rook here. Yeah, and again, promoting. So going here, rook c8 check was played. A rook c1 check. Obviously taking back, queen takes, king g2. Black is up the exchange and may be able to keep it after rook f8. Or just rook a8 too. So king g2 is what I'm considering. There are no checks. There's no queen e4, the knight. No queen f3. The queen protects f2 if any rook f8. That means the queen is just hanging and the rook is hanging, and the queen can't really defend both. Also, this is hanging. So I think if just king g2, queen h5, queen takes, rook takes c1, queen takes c1, knight takes c8, and we're up a piece. Black can't really do anything. So king g2. Yes. Queen takes c5. And we don't want to take on e8 because I'll hang the rook. But lucky we take on c1. And the queen protects this. No queen e4 check again. Nice. All right, this one. All right, so equal material. Black has a pretty active king, but can't really go any further. I'd want to restrict black's moves. So, and I think we could literally do that by force even with the move c5, preventing the king from going back to d6. The only move that is possible is h4 and then takes king f4. Now that king's going to be needing some time to get back to trying to take that pawn. So what can we do in the meantime? c5. Let's consider any other white moves. Let's not try to get carried away. So another move that's possible is the move b4 and then a4 and then takes king here, king d6, king here, and then we might be able to break through after king c6, e5 takes and takes. So, but let me see. a4 I think is going to be in the step in the wrong direction after b4, c5. Yeah, actually I may not be confident in c5 because of h4 takes and king f4. And maybe we can't break through after e5. Okay, hold on. c5, h4, takes, king f4, king h4, king g4. Because if e5, I think just king takes f5. Yeah, so c5 is going to be in the step in the wrong direction because of h4. So what I'm considering here is trying to make a pass pawn over here, not trying to lock things up. So probably takes, and then a4. Because if b4, obviously king c4. Or no, actually I'm not sure after king takes c4. Okay, this is tricky. Let's think about b4 here instead. a4, takes, king e3. That should be excellent. So takes. Probably taking on b5 first. And then maybe b4. Takes, h4, takes, king f4, king e4, king g4. No, he's a step away. I play king b5 and take here and promote. He's too slow. I think it is takes and b4. So takes, b4. If a4, then king e3. And we gain opposition no matter what. Yeah, I'm convinced it's takes. No! There's no way it's c5. It could be b4 too. It is c5. Why does that work? What was I scared of? King g4. King e3. e5. Wow. Crazy. No, king e3 is definitely... That's definitely an X-clam. Maybe even a double X-clam move. Wow. Yeah, going backward. Why does taking not work? And then b4. It doesn't matter, actually. Oh, king d6. And I can't break through here. Oh, man. Wow, really? g5. Wow, look at this. h4 takes here and here. Wow. And apparently, and yeah, I'm lost here, actually. Because he just goes here. That's crazy. So that's why c takes b5 doesn't work, but c5 does. The key move, king e3. To just shoulder. Continuously shoulder. If king e3, obviously h5, I think, right? No, king g4, e5 first. And then h5, I think, is probably the simplest. But the whole point is, here king takes h4. Yeah, this is probably maybe even easier. Yeah, just e5. King h5, e5 again, takes. King g5. King e6. King f4. I feel like this is a study I've actually maybe seen before. I feel like I've maybe seen this position. King takes b5, king takes c5, g5. Wow, and I promote first. That's crazy. I'm pretty sure that's got to be some endgame study that I've seen before. Okay, so we can take the knight. It's equal material. I can make a pass pawn, but so can white. Oh, white already has a pass pawn. So let's say takes. The pawn is threatening to push. Takes. b7, c2, takes. Then takes. I think I'm just promoting. And I am. I'm going to promote, and he has to play rook d1. Because if he takes, I take back with mate. Okay. So takes. Yeah, and if if I'm able to play c2, he has to play rook c1, I'll play here. And collect the pawn and just come back. So, yeah, I don't think there is any other move to consider there. b7, and again, c2. Yeah, it doesn't matter because rook takes. And rook a1, promote. And I'm able to keep the queen because he has to play rook d1. If he takes, he gets mated. Yeah, that one wasn't too difficult. Queen g4. All right, we're on the verge of getting mated. We're down material. We need to do something ourselves first. So let's do exactly that. Queen takes c3 check is the first move that I see. There's also rook takes f2 check. Rook takes f2, king takes f2, knight takes e3 check. And I don't think we're getting mated after rook h8 because king g7. The king is going to get to g5 at least. So rook takes f2 is probably the easiest. I don't think queen takes c3 actually because king b1. Knight c3 check, king a1. So it's got to be rook takes f2. And it is. Knight takes c3 check. Knight takes here. And again, check, check. The king just gets away here. And if... Yeah. There's nothing else to consider. I guess the only thing else is here. But then again, just king g5. Yeah. Because if queen takes c3 check, king b1, knight c3, just king a1. And we don't have a check. And then rook h8 check is on the way. Queen c8 check's on the way. All right. Queen f4. So counting the material, white's up a... No. Equal material, but obviously white is way more active. Obviously, the first thing that's noticed is just the rook is hanging. Or for example, rook takes c7. The concern is whether there's going to be some like knight h6 or knight f6 check. Yeah, like rook takes f6, knight f6 takes, and then maybe. Actually, what is going on here? Is the rook even hanging? I don't really understand why the rook is not hanging. There's no knight f6. Because there's no queen g5 after that. Rook takes f6. There's no queen g4. There's no bishop takes g7. Because rook takes e1 check, queen d5. I don't see why that's not a free rook. I mean, bishop b4 will happen at the end, but again, just anything really like queen e2 to attack the knight. Yeah, I'm not convinced. Yeah, that is free. Yeah, I guess maybe they was trying to trick me into thinking I had a knight f6. But I think I just take. Because queen takes, rook takes c1, and there's no check. And bishop takes f6. Again, rook takes c1, king g2, queen d5, and queen f5. Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole point was just trying to see if I would get tricked. Or just get spooked into not taking the rook. Again, I think like anything bishop takes g7 doesn't work. Knight takes g7 doesn't work. Definitely not any queen f6. Yeah. And we got to 2401. We'll do one more, though. See if we can maintain it. Okay. Rook endgame with mutual passed pawns. Rook b3 check. Obviously, or not rook b3 check, just rook b3. Obviously, if king takes b3, then b1 queen. That's terrible. We need to stop b1. The only move that can do that is king b1. So... And then obviously we have this pawn that can promote. So let's say king b1. It's got to stop promotion. Rook g3. Well, actually, after king b1, I think just rook g3, rook f5 is going to win, because how do you stop g7? Yeah, you have to go back around. And then g7, rook e8, rook f8. There you go. So king b1. That's the only thing to consider would be c4, but again, g7, c3... It's actually a little bit tricky. I think just putting the rook there on c7 will do it, though. Followed by promotion. And if you try to move... Yeah, you can't move the rook. See, I think it's just going to be king b1 here. Yes, it is. c4, and I think you could just play g7. I don't think there's a need to play rook c7 first, especially if the rook can just go behind. And play rook takes g5. So I think just g7. Yes. And then putting the rook behind rook c7 just to make sure that doesn't happen. And then obviously not allowing rook a1. So I think just rook takes c3. Rook takes c3, g8, queen. Yep. Rook a1 just takes. Rook takes there, promote. And then b2 is hanging. All right. That was a lot of puzzles, but we did get back to I did get back to 2400. I was 2400 before. I just wanted to get back to it. All right, those are some interesting puzzles. How many did I do here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So 23 puzzles, and I only got 5 wrong, so that means I got 18 right. Or I guess it's this one? Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And I only got 5 wrong, so I got 18 out of 23, 18 right. So that was pretty good. I think there was some interesting puzzles, and that we feel confident going into the state championship. I think I'm pretty sharp, so yeah. Just if you can practice puzzles, doing tactics in any sort of form, whether it be a book, whether it be a tactics trainer, and just always looking out for, forcing moves, all the checks, captures, and threats. And then for end games, just consider every legal move possible to try to get what you're trying to achieve, whether it be trying to make a pass pawn, trying to stop enemy counterplay. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you got to see a little bit into my thoughts, what I'm seeing when I'm looking at puzzles, looking for tactics. If you have any questions or anything you want to say, just leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.